The prisoner. The prison ship Karthak 7 drifted through the void like a metal coffin. Inside its darkest cell, Commander Elena Cross sat in silence, her wrists bound with graviton shackles that hummed with lethal energy. The VRNN Collective had captured her 3 weeks ago during the Battle of Kepler Station. Since then, she had been interrogated, beaten, and displayed as a trophy. Today felt different. The cell door hissed open. A tall VRNN officer entered, his exoskeleton clicking with each step. His face was insectoid, all sharp angles and black eyes that reflected no mercy. Behind him, 2 guards leveled plasma rifles at Elena's chest. "Human," the officer said in broken English. "You are wanted." Elena stood slowly. Her legs trembled from malnutrition, but she kept her chin high. "For what? Another beating? Or are you finally going to execute me?" The VRNN officer tilted his head. "Neither. You are being released." Elena blinked. "Released? To who? Does it matter?" The officer gestured to the guards. They deactivated her shackles. The graviton field collapsed, and Elena nearly fell. Her muscles screamed as blood rushed back into her arms. "There is a condition," the officer continued. "You will escort a cargo transport to the border zone. Alone. If you refuse, you will be executed immediately." Elena rubbed her wrists. "What's the cargo?" The officer didn't answer. He simply turned and walked away. 30 minutes later, Elena stood in the docking bay, staring at the transport vessel. It was old, human-made, maybe 50 years out of date. The hull was scarred with blast marks, and the engine sputtered weakly. A death trap. A VRNN technician handed her a data tablet. Cargo manifest. Medical supplies. Destination, Neutral Station 12. You have 48 hours. Elena scrolled through the manifest. Medical supplies. Vaccines. Antibiotics. The kind of equipment that could save thousands of lives in a refugee camp. Her jaw tightened. "Why me?" she asked. The technician's mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh. "Because you are human. You do not leave others behind. Even enemies." Elena's fingers curled around the tablet. The technician was right. Humanity's greatest strength, and its greatest weakness, was empathy. The VRNN knew that. They were testing her. She climbed aboard the transport. The ship groaned as Elena fired the engines. The controls were sluggish, and half the navigation systems were offline. She plotted a course to Neutral Station 12 and engaged the autopilot. Then she went to check the cargo. The hold was freezing. Elena's breath fogged in the air as she descended the ladder. Rows of refrigerated crates lined the walls, each marked with medical symbols. She opened one. Inside were syringes. Hundreds of them. But something was wrong. Elena pulled out a syringe and held it up to the dim light. The liquid inside wasn't clear, it was faintly purple. She checked the label. No manufacturer. No expiration date. Just a serial number in VRNN script. Her stomach sank. She opened another crate. Same thing. Purple liquid. No labels. She opened a third crate and froze. Inside wasn't medicine. It was a child. A VRNN child, no older than 5 in human years. Its small body was curled in a stasis pod, shivering despite the cold. Elena's hands trembled as she checked the other crates. More children. Dozens of them. All VRNN. All unconscious. Elena stumbled backward, her mind racing. This wasn't a medical shipment. This was a trafficking operation. And the VRNN Collective had forced her, a human commander, to be the courier. If she delivered the cargo, she would be complicit in whatever horrors awaited these children. If she didn't, the VRYNN would hunt her down and execute her. But there was a third option. Elena returned to the cockpit and pulled up the star charts. Neutral Station 12 was 2 days away. But there was another station closer, just 18 hours. A human outpost on the edge of contested space. It was dangerous. Heavily patrolled by VRYNN warships. But if she could reach it, she could save the children. Elena's hands hovered over the controls. She thought about the wars humanity had fought. The colonies burned. The billions lost. The VRYNN had given humanity every reason to hate them. But these weren't soldiers. They were children. Elena reprogrammed the autopilot. 6 hours later, alarms screamed through the cockpit. A VRYNN patrol cruiser had locked onto her position. Elena gripped the controls as the enemy ship closed in. "Transport vessel, you are off course," a voice crackled over the comms. "Return to your designated route or you will be destroyed." Elena didn't respond. She pushed the engines to maximum. The transport shuddered violently, but it held together. The VRYNN cruiser fired a warning shot. Plasma bolts streaked past the viewport, close enough to scorch the hull. "Final warning, human. Return to your route." Elena glanced at the radar. The human outpost was 12 hours away. She would never make it. Unless she fought back. Elena's fingers flew over the console. The transport had minimal weapons, just a single plasma turret designed for debris clearing. She activated it manually and locked onto the cruiser's engines. "Forgive me," she whispered. She fired. The choice. The plasma bolt struck true. The VRYNN cruiser's starboard engine erupted in a cascade of blue fire. The warship spun wildly, its trajectory broken. Elena didn't wait to see if it recovered. She pushed the transport's engines past their safety limits and dove into a nearby asteroid field. Rocks the size of cities loomed in the darkness. Elena weaved between them, her hands white-knuckled on the controls. The transport's hull screamed as fragments pelted the shields. Behind her, the VRYNN cruiser struggled to follow, its damaged engine spewing plasma into the void. "Come on," Elena whispered. "Just a little further." The cruiser fired again. This time, the shot went wide, vaporizing an asteroid instead. Debris exploded outward, creating a temporary barrier. Elena used the cover to break line of sight and activate the ship's stealth dampeners. The transport went dark. Elena held her breath. On the radar, the VRYNN cruiser circled the asteroid field like a predator hunting wounded prey. Its scanners swept the area, searching for heat signatures, engine traces, anything that would reveal her position. Seconds stretched into minutes. Finally, the cruiser turned away. Its engines flared as it accelerated back toward VRYNN space, probably to report the incident and call for reinforcements. Elena slumped in her seat, exhaling shakily. She had bought herself time, but not much. The VRYNN would send more ships. Faster ones. Deadlier ones. She checked the navigation computer. 10 hours to the human outpost. She might make it. If the transport held together. Elena returned to the cargo hold. The children were still unconscious in their stasis pods, oblivious to the battle that had just saved their lives. She knelt beside the smallest one, a VRYNN child with soft silver exoskeleton plates that hadn't fully hardened yet. "I don't know what they were going to do to you," Elena said quietly. "But I won't let it happen." She stood and began checking the life support systems for each pod. Most were functioning normally, but 3 were failing. The temperature regulators were malfunctioning, and the stasis fields were weakening. If she didn't fix them soon, the children would die. Elena grabbed a repair kit and got to work. She wasn't an engineer, but she had learned enough during her years in the fleet. She bypassed damaged circuits, rerouted power from non-essential systems, and jury-rigged temperature controls using spare components. It took 2 hours, but she stabilized all 3 pods. As she sealed the last panel, one of the children stirred. Elena froze. The child's black eyes fluttered open. It looked at her with confusion and fear. Its mandibles clicked softly, a sound Elena recognized as distress. The child tried to move, but the stasis field held it in place. "It's okay," Elena said gently, raising her hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." The child stared at her. Then its eyes widened in recognition. It knew what she was. Human. The enemy. The child began to scream. The sound was high-pitched and piercing, echoing through the cargo hold. Elena stepped back, her heart racing. She didn't know what to do. If she opened the pod, the child might attack her. If she left it sealed, the trauma could cause permanent damage. "Please," Elena said, her voice breaking. "I'm trying to help you." The child kept screaming. Its small fists pounded against the inside of the stasis pod. Tears, or something like them, streamed down its face. Elena made a decision. She deactivated the stasis field. The pod hissed open. The child lunged at her, its small claws slashing wildly. Elena caught its wrists and held on tight, even as the claws drew blood across her forearms. "Stop!" Elena shouted. "I'm not your enemy." The child thrashed and kicked, but Elena didn't let go. She pulled the child close, wrapping her arms around it despite the pain. The child fought for a few more seconds, then went limp, sobbing against her chest. Elena held the child and said nothing. She simply let it cry. Minutes passed. The child's sobs slowly subsided. Elena felt its small body trembling against hers. She looked down and saw fear in its eyes, not of her, but of something else. Something worse. "What did they do to you?" Elena whispered. The child didn't answer. It couldn't. But Elena understood. These children weren't just cargo. They were victims. Elena carried the child back to the cockpit and set it down in the co-pilot's seat. The child watched her warily but didn't try to run. Elena pulled up the star charts and pointed to the blinking icon of the human outpost. "That's where we're going," she said. "It's safe there. I promise." The child tilted its head, processing her words. Then it pointed to the cargo hold and made a series of clicking sounds. Elena frowned. "The others? They're fine. I fixed the pods." The child clicked again, more urgently. It pointed to Elena's bleeding forearms, then back to the cargo hold. Elena realized what it was trying to say. The child was worried about the others waking up alone and afraid, just like it had. "You want me to wake them?" Elena asked. The child nodded. Elena hesitated. Waking all the children would drain the life support systems faster. It would also make the transport harder to control if they panicked. But looking at the child's desperate eyes, she couldn't refuse. "All right," Elena said. "Let's wake them up." One by one, Elena opened the stasis pods. Each child woke in terror, just like the first. But the first child, the brave one, stayed by Elena's side, clicking softly to the others in their own language. Slowly, the children began to calm down. Within an hour, all 23 VRWN children were awake. They huddled together in the cargo hold, watching Elena with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She distributed emergency rations and water, though she wasn't sure if VRWN children could eat human food. They nibbled cautiously. The brave child stayed close to Elena. It tugged on her sleeve and pointed to the viewport, where stars streaked past in hyperspace. "You want to see?" Elena asked. The child nodded. Elena lifted it up so it could look out the window. The child's eyes widened in wonder. It had probably never seen space like this before, free, open, infinite. "That's what freedom looks like," Elena said softly. And I'm going to make sure you get it. The child looked up at her and clicked something that sounded almost like, "Thank you." 7 hours later, the human outpost appeared on the radar. Elena's heart surged with hope. They were almost there. Then the alarm screamed again. 3 VRNN warships dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead. They formed a blockade between Elena and the outpost. The lead ship's captain hailed her immediately. "Human commander. You have stolen VRNN property. Return the cargo immediately, or we will open fire." Elena looked back at the cargo hold. 23 children stared at her with wide, trusting eyes. She turned back to the comms. "No," she said. The warships powered their weapons. The stand. Elena stared at the 3 warships blocking her path. Each one was 10 times the size of her transport. Their weapons were charged and ready. She had no shields, no armor, and barely enough fuel to reach the outpost. She should surrender. But she looked back at the children again. The brave one stood at the doorway to the cargo hold, watching her. Its small hand gripped the frame, knuckles pale beneath the silver exoskeleton. Elena turned back to the comms. "These children are not property," she said firmly. "They're refugees. And I'm taking them to safety." The VRNN captain's voice crackled with anger. "You are a thief and a traitor. The collective will make an example of you. Then you'll have to shoot through children to do it," Elena replied. Silence. Elena held her breath. She had gambled everything on one assumption, that even the VRYN, as ruthless as they were, wouldn't murder their own children in cold blood. She was wrong. "Fire," the captain ordered. Plasma cannons erupted across all 3 warships. Elena threw the transport into a desperate dive, but she knew it was hopeless. The first volley would tear through the hull and kill everyone aboard. But the shots never came. Instead, brilliant white beams lanced out from behind Elena's ship. They struck the VRNN warship's weapons batteries, destroying them in cascades of molten metal. Elena spun in her seat and looked at the viewport. A human destroyer had appeared. The USS Defiance, one of humanity's newest warships, hung in space between Elena and the VRNN blockade. Its railguns glowed hot from the barrage. Behind it, 2 more human vessels dropped out of hyperspace, flanking the VRNN formation. Elena's radio crackled to life. "Transport vessel, this is Captain Marcus Shaw of the Defiance. We're here to escort you home." Elena's eyes burned with tears. "Captain Shaw, how did you know?" "Your distress beacon activated when the VRNN first fired on you," Shaw replied. "We've been tracking you for the last 6 hours. And we heard everything you said just now." Shaw's voice hardened. "VRNN vessels, you are in violation of interstellar law. Those children are protected under the Refugee Protection Accords. Stand down immediately, or we will open fire." The VRNN captain responded with fury. "Those children belong to the collective." They are children," Shaw interrupted coldly. "And if you want them back, you can file a formal request through neutral arbitration. Until then, they're under human protection." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the VRNN warships powered down their weapons. They turned and retreated into hyperspace, leaving Elena alone with the human fleet. Elena slumped forward, her entire body shaking with relief. "Commander Cross," Shaw said gently. "Bring those kids home." 2 hours later, Elena docked at the human outpost. Medical teams rushed aboard immediately, surrounding the VRNN children with scanners and emergency kits. The children clung to each other, terrified of the strange humans in white coats. Elena stepped between them. "It's okay," she told the children. "They're doctors. They just want to help." The brave child looked up at her. It clicked something softly, a question. Elena knelt down. "You're asking if you're safe now?" The child nodded. Yes, Elena said, her voice breaking. You're safe. I promise. The child stepped forward and wrapped its small arms around Elena's neck. One by one, the other children did the same. Elena held them all, tears streaming down her face. The medical staff watched in silence. One of the doctors, a gray-haired woman named Dr. Chen, approached Elena carefully. Commander, she said quietly. We need to examine them. Can you help us? Elena nodded. She spoke to the children in simple words and gestures, encouraging them to follow the doctors. The brave child took her hand and led the others forward. Captain Shaw met Elena in the station's command center. He was a tall man with graying hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. He poured her a cup of coffee, real coffee, not the synthetic garbage on military vessels, and sat across from her. You did something incredible today, Shaw said. Elena shook her head. I just did what anyone would do. No, Shaw replied firmly. Most people wouldn't have risked their lives for enemy children. Hell, most soldiers would have delivered the cargo and walked away. You didn't. Elena stared into her coffee. Those kids didn't start this war. They didn't ask to be born VRYN. They're just kids. Shaw leaned back. The VRYN collective is claiming you kidnapped them. They're demanding your extradition for trial. Elena's jaw tightened. Will you hand me over? Not a chance, Shaw said. But this is going to cause problems. Big ones. The ceasefire negotiations were already fragile. This might collapse them entirely. So what happens now? Shaw sighed. Honestly? I don't know. But I can tell you this, those children are alive because of you. And that matters more than politics. 3 days later, Elena stood in the outpost's observation deck, watching the stars. She had been cleared of all charges by human command, but the VRYN wanted her head. She couldn't return to active duty. She couldn't go home. She was a fugitive now. The door hissed open behind her. Elena turned and saw the brave child standing there, flanked by Dr. Chen. It wanted to see you, Dr. Chen said with a smile. We've been teaching it some basic English. The child walked forward and stopped in front of Elena. It looked up at her with those large black eyes and spoke in halting, accented words. Thank you. Elena's breath caught. She knelt down and took the child's hands. You're welcome, she whispered. The child reached into its pocket and pulled out a small piece of metal, a fragment of the stasis pod Elena had repaired. The child had carved symbols into it with its claws. VRYN writing. What does it say? Elena asked. Dr. Chen stepped closer. It says, mercy. The child pressed the metal into Elena's palm and closed her fingers around it. You are, hero, the child said carefully. Elena pulled the child into a hug. Behind them, Dr. Chen wiped tears from her eyes. 6 months later, the VRYN collective and humanity signed a historic peace treaty. Buried in the agreement was a clause requiring both sides to cooperate on rescuing trafficked children, of any species. The treaty was nicknamed the Cross Accord. Elena never returned to military service. Instead, she founded a refugee organization that operated across both human and VRYN space. The brave child, whose name was Zakara, stayed with her, eventually becoming her adopted daughter. Years later, when asked why she risked everything for enemy children, Elena always gave the same answer. Because mercy isn't weakness. It's the hardest kind of strength. And if humanity wants to survive in this universe, we have to prove that we're better than the wars we fight. The interviewer would always ask one final question: do you regret your choice? Elena would smile and look at Sakara, who sat beside her, now a young adult, strong and proud. Never, Elena would say. Not for a single second.